Thank you for joining us for the Miami Valley Salute to Veterans. I'm Cindy LaPointe-Dafler, a volunteer host for the Miami Valley Communications Council. My husband was killed in Vietnam in 1969. He was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor. Why am I a host for this? Well, I love being around veterans, hearing their stories, talking with them. This is my way of honoring my husband's legacy. We hope that hearing these memories from veterans of our community will help us all better understand the dedication of those who have served. Today we're talking with Vince Dec of Xenia. You're still in Xenia.
Correct.
A Marine veteran who served from 1967 to 1974, and he'll tell us the story of his time in the military. Thank you for being with us here today.
My military service, I joined the Marine Corps in 1967, and all my friends were being drafted at that time because there was a draft back in them days.
Oh, yeah.
And they were all 1A, and couldn't figure out why they wouldn't call me. So one day, a friend of mine from when we were in high school, he said, when he got home, he called me and said he got a letter from Uncle Sam. And I says, really? I said, what did he say? You know, and we kind of laughed about it and everything. And he says, well, welcome to the Army. And then he asked me if I wanted to go buddy plan. And I says, yeah, Paul, I'll go buddy plan if we go airborne. And he says, there ain't no way I'm jumping out of an airplane. And I says, okay. So he says, I'm just going to go in and see what they offer me, you know, when I get drafted. And he ended up in 3 different infantry units in Vietnam. He was awarded the Bronze Star, and he also was a door gunner. So I helped him with his disability. And not too long ago, he received what I think he deserves, because he's seen a lot of trauma, and it still bothers him to this day. But anyway, back to me joining the Marine Corps. So all my friends were getting drafted, and I couldn't figure out why they wouldn't call me. So I went down to the recruiter. First, I looked at the Air Force because I wanted to fly jets. Well, then I decided, no, I don't want to do that, because my father was a Marine. And he served on Midway in 1943. He was injured severely. And then he was in the hospital for 9 months in Oakland, California, I believe. And then he was medical released from the Marine Corps. And then in 1952, at the age 29, my father passed away, and I was 4.5 years old. And I saw him hemorrhaging, but anyway, every time I go back to Chicago land, where I'm from, area, I always stop by and see my father and clean up his headstones and all that. So anyway, when I was in Vietnam, I got medevaced because I was around a lot of agents, and I developed a serious skin problem, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong, so they wanted to send me back to the States. And I told my colonel, I said, sir, I don't want to leave. And he says, you disobeying my order? And I says, no, sir. He says, get on that Jeep and they'll take you to NSA Hospital, which is in Da Nang. So I went to NSA Hospital, and I was in there for about 3 days with wounded veterans and stuff like that, soldiers. And all of a sudden we got a MAC flight. And I got up that morning and got on, they put us on the plane, rather, and sent us off to Japan. And then I think we were there a day. If I'm not, I can't remember. But then from Japan, we flew to Anchorage, Alaska. And then when I landed in Anchorage and saw that big mountain there, I says, I don't know how this plane never hit that. That's the biggest mountain I ever seen that close, you know. And so then we got back on the plane after it was all refueled, and they sent me down to Scott Air Force Base. And I was down at Scott Air Force Base, which is in southern Illinois. And then I waited for I was there about 2 weeks until the Navy from Great Lakes came down and picked me up and flew me up to Great Lakes Naval Station. I was in the hospital there, I think, about 3 months.
Oh, my.
And then I went in front of Jesse Brown, which I don't know if people know who Jesse Brown was. Well, he was a captain, and I went in front of him. But later on, through the years, he became secretary of the VA.
Okay.
And he had passed away, I don't know how long ago, it's been a while, from Agent Orange as well. He had some problems. But would have to go to Great Lakes Naval Hospital every 6 months to be reevaluated for my condition. So after the 4 years, I would have to go for 4 years every 6 months to be reevaluated. So after the last time I went to the Naval Hospital, I asked them, I says, what do I do now? And they says, just wait until you hear from Headquarters Marine Corps. So then it was sometime in January, maybe a couple of weeks afterwards, because I got a big red book in the mail from Headquarters Marine Corps, and it says that you are retired on January 1st, 1974, and it was signed by the Commandant of the Marine Corps, and it was a nice honor.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So you chose the Marines because your father was Marine?
Yes. My father was a Marine, and then I had 2 uncles that were on Iwo Jima, and then I had one cousin. He was in the Cuban crisis back in the day when the Russians were putting missiles down in Cuba. So, yeah, we got a pretty strong family of Marines.
Yeah. So how old were you when you joined the Marines?
I believe I was either 18 or 19.
Okay. So
Young. Didn't know what was going on.
Young and dumb, huh?
Yeah, I wish I knew what was going on.
Yeah.
I know a lot of things nowadays. I wish I would have known then, but that's okay.
Don't we all?
Yes.
So where did you take your basic training?
Well, when I was going into the induction center in Chicago, they had a line, and one line was the Marines, and the other line was the draftees, where they were drafted into the Army. So the sergeant in my line, he yelled over to the sergeant over in the Army line, which I never knew what them lines were about at that time. He said, hey, we need 4 more guys over here. So they grabbed 4 guys who were drafted in the Army and stuck them behind the line of the Marines.
I didn't know they did that.
And these guys couldn't believe it until we got to boot camp. And where we ended up was California. And how that happened was they would call off so many guys as you were going through past the sergeant. He'd tap you on the shoulder and say, P.I., P.I., P.I. So then he put his hand across my chest and stopped me and says, Hollywood. And I says, Hollywood? And he said, get up that way, down that way, So I ended up going to Hollywood. So I'm a Hollywood Marine, but you know what? Marine Corps is the Marine Corps, and we did things that we never thought we could do, and we done them.
Yeah. What did you think about that? I mean, you were an Ohio boy. Had you been away from home much, or?
No. But, it was okay. Once you get used to something, it all works out pretty good,
Sure.
So let me tell you something about boot camp now.
Yes.
My name is Vincent Dec, and when you get in the Marine Corps, you learn what a deck is. That's the ground. And that DI all through boot camp says, deck, hit the deck, give me 25. And I'm going, oh my gosh, when's this going to end? So I was so happy to graduate from boot camp because I really kind of hated my name, Dec. I wish I would have never had that name, but I survived.
Obviously. What was the best part of that training?
Disciplined.
You learned discipline.
Yes. And I respect the Marine Corps for that, because that made a better person out of me, I believe. And I do believe 100% it did. Um, Discipline, that's a good word.
Yeah. Do any of the instructors or sergeants, or do they any one of them stand out in your mind? Or have you forgotten all of them?
No, I never forgot them. Because back in the Marine Corps in them days, it's nothing like the Marine Corps today because they physically hit you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I went to the rifle range and I outscored everybody in, I should have had an expert badge. Well, I ended up with a marksman's badge, and that DI called me into his duty hut, and he was standing on a foot locker, and he put his knee right into my chest, and then he jumped down and gave me a couple kicks in the side. But that's how they were back then. You know, a lot of people don't realize what them veterans went through, you know, in the Marine Corps. But
Mm-hmm.
and then he said, "Get out of here." He was pretty upset with me. Well, I can understand that. You know, I was doing real good, you know, firing my weapon, you know, and I was hitting the target all the time. But qualification day, I choked, and what it is
Oh.
what it is, you know.
So he knew you were capable of more
Oh
than
yeah, yeah, yeah.
you
So
gave him. Oh my gosh. So how about advanced training?
after boot camp, I went to artillery school,
Okay.
and I was hitting the hundreds on the mapping. So they made me a FO, forward observer, and then you know, a gunner and so on and so forth with artillery. I was with 3rd Battalion, 11th Marines, 1st Marine Division in Vietnam, 68 and 9, and I never experienced being a FO. They made me, you know, a gunner. It was kind of different. In the Marine Corps, you never know what you're going to do because they could take you out of that unit and put you in another unit.
Sure.
It's but anyway, that's what I. Okay, after I went to artillery school, then they sent me home for I think 30 days, and then I came back to Camp Pendleton and went through staging battalion. I think it was for 2 weeks, and after 2 weeks, one morning about 3 o'clock in the morning, they said time to move out. So we grabbed our gear and got on the bus and went to El Toro Air Base, which is no longer there, I believe. And there was these 2 big long jets, the Golden Dragon of Continental, and they were the longest jets I ever saw. These things are huge. So we flew over to towards Vietnam, and we landed. Our first stop was in Hawaii. We refueled, and then I think we were in the air like 23 hours or something. It was a long flight. So as we were flying towards Japan, Okinawa, um, the pilot says we're flying pretty close to Iwo Jima, so he banked the jet to the right. And as he banked the jet to the right, the far engine caught a fire, and people were like freaking out. And he says, "Don't worry, it's all taken care of." And he had a fire extinguisher. I guess they have fire extinguishers on the jet engines,
Mm-hmm.
and he put it out. So, yeah, that was quite crazy.
Oh my God. So that was your first assignment after training?
Yeah, I went to Okinawa.
Mm-hmm.
Then I think I was on Okinawa about 3 days. Then they flew me to Vietnam, Da Nang,
Okay, you landed in Da Nang.
and we did not land in Da Nang because as we were approaching, coming in, well, we were still pretty high. You could see the air base getting shelled, and the pilot said, "Well, we can't land today," so he turned the jet back and went to Okinawa.
Wow.
We went back to Okinawa. We was there about 3 or 4 days and drank a lot of beer and thinking about Vietnam. And then we got on the plane again. And the second time we did land, and I was in this tent for probably 3 days waiting for my unit to come and pick me up.
Wow.
And they finally picked me up and took me out to the gun battery.
Oh my gosh. So where in Vietnam were you? Where was your
I was
base?
outside Da Nang.
Outside Da Nang.
Yeah, like a 23-mile radius. I spent a lot of time on Hill 55, close to a place called Dodge City. It was a big field of rice paddies. And while we were going out to the hill one day, I'm hearing, this is when I first got in Vietnam, because I was green as heck, I didn't know what was going on. So I hear this stuff going past my head, and I didn't know what it was. I says, Sarge, what is that? He says, oh, it's just a sniper trying to kill you. And I says, then I kind of bent down in the back of the PC, and I said, oh my gosh, So yeah, it was crazy.
Oh gosh. If you're just joining us, this is Miami Valley Communications Council Salute to Veterans podcast. And I'm your host, Cindy LaPointe-Dafler. Today we're talking with Vince Dec. What an experience so far.
Yes.
So what was your camp called? Were you in a camp?
I just called it Hill 55,
Okay.
But one time my first sergeant, he used to smoke these big cigars, and he was in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam as well.
Oh my.
He was a super nice guy. I can't even remember his name. I got pictures of him and smoking them big cigars, And he would make me drive him to Da Nang, so we go to the air base, and he would trade supplies with the Air Force guys. And one time, the sergeant from the Air Force says, there's some barrels over there. You could probably take them back and make showers out of them. And I says, wow, and the sergeant says, put them on the back of the 6x. So I put about 3 barrels on there. And when I got back, I was going to make the shower. So I cut the lids out, and they fell inside the barrel. I had to use a hammer and a chisel. So I cut the tops off, and it fell in, and I said, hey, Sarge, there's some kind of oil in here or something. This stuff ain't going to kill you. And I says, okay. So I just wiped it out with a rag. Oh. And about 2 weeks later, that's when I experienced my skin being disasterized, I would call it, because under my arm, it would get raw, bleed, burn, pus. Then I had rashes, and I had bumps growing on me and all kinds of weird stuff, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. So that's why they medevaced me. I was in country after that incident, probably about 3 weeks, and they finally sent me to NSA. And when they did send me to NSA hospital, the note that the colonel gave me, it said, this man's a good worker, good attitude, etc. If his condition cannot be controlled, please medevac. Now, I still have the letter to this day that he wrote, but that's what happened with the Agent Orange barrel. Didn't realize they were Agent Orange barrels,
Right.
I thought, he said, it's just oil, wipe it out, and it was Agent Orange barrels that sergeant from the Da Nang Air Base gave us. Oh, boy. I don't hold nothing against them, though, because we didn't know.
No. How did your combat experience change you?
Oh, boy. Awareness, I guess. I don't know. I had a hard time for a long time. I would just, like, sometimes I would drive home from the VA and I just burst into tears and couldn't figure out what was going on. So I've been going to PTSD group at the VA, which is a number one hospital in my heart. I can't even thank them for all the things they've done for me. And it's such a wonderful place. There's so many good people there. You got a couple people that are kind of rude, but, that doesn't make the hospital bad. And I try to explain that to other people who have problems, at the hospital, that somebody might be rude to them. But, I say, there's a lot of good things here being offered to you. So, just accept what you get. You know what I mean? But yeah, they've been taking care of me for years, and I've been going to PTSD now since I think '93. And I go. I used to go every week, and then they broke it down twice a month, and now they have us going once a month. But it's a good support group. I have a lot of wonderful people in my group that support each other, and we're a family, and we know what's going on because we've been through it, which a civilian out there does not know what war's about until you really experience it.
Yes, exactly.
And I don't want anybody in this country to really experience it. What I mean is have the war here in our land, like 9/11. You know, that shocked the nation. You know, and it hurt a lot of people. I had my sister. She called me up that day, and she was freaking out. And I says, "Don't worry, everything will be okay." You know, but yeah, like war's no good. It's chaos and killing, and there's nothing good about that.
Yeah. What was the best part of your military experience?
That'd be a hard one to say because it was cut so short. Because I wanted to make a career, and I wanted to be a pilot. And every time I saw them F-4s in Vietnam, I says, "Man, that's me. I got to get on one of them babies." But it just never happened. So the Lord had another plan for me, and right now I'm doing a lot of volunteering work at the VA, which really helps me mentally and physically because I'm always on the move. I don't sit still. This is amazing. I'm sitting still right here in this chair.
I know.
But I'm going to continue to keep doing my job, helping veterans and their families, whatever they need, you know, working with hospice, National Cemetery Support Committee, ICU waiting room at the VA with volunteers and deputies. And the only way I'm going to leave there probably is when I can't walk.
And you walk pretty good now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's great. When you were discharged, you went home, right?
Yes.
And what did you do then?
Well, everybody wanted to just lay back and take it easy, but I'm so energetic and I could not do that. So I went out looking for a job, and by luck, a good friend of mine from high school, his dad was the train master for the Indiana Harbor Belt Railroad in Hammond, Indiana. And I got on the railroad, and I'll tell you what, I made good money, and I put in a lot of hours. I was on an extra board, they call it at first, and then I worked myself up as a belt conductor, which I would take trains from Hammond, Indiana, up to the St. Paul yards up in Chicago. So on the way back, we would never make it in time. So back in them days, they had the thing called, well, they still have it. It's called hog-logged. So after 16, you had to stop the train and call for a taxi. Actually call the train master, and he'll tell you taxis are on their way and all that. So I'll be sitting on this engine sometimes for 3 or 4, 6 hours waiting for a taxi. And meanwhile, I'm making double time and a half or double time or whatever, you know. So it was an excellent job. And then my wife's from Massillon, Ohio, and Massillon is a big football town. I got to put that in there because, you know, state champions 22 times. And if you watch Massillon so far this year, they are like a steamroller. They are rocking and rolling. I love it. I'm going back to Massillon here soon to see some of the games. And I still have a lot of friends back there because I had a record store at one time. And it was quite interesting. And during my record store career in Massillon for 20 years or more, I was a Ticketron agent. I sold tickets for all the national concerts, I guess, all the rock and roll concerts and soul concerts, country concerts, bluegrass concerts, circuses, ice capades, weightlifting,
What?
all kinds of different things, And I sold a lot of tickets for the Cleveland Browns and also the Cincinnati Bengals because I had access to all the tickets all through the country for all the NFL games. I sold tickets for like San Francisco 49ers. People would fly out to California to see the 49ers. And then I also, during my career with my record store, I called Laid Back Records. It was started in 75 of June. And I got involved in radio and I got involved in television. I had a show on DATV for 13 years called Johnny Meadows Update. And I go backstage with all the national bands and interview them and put that on the air and stuff. And then I was divorced in 94, I think it was. And then I came down to Dayton, Ohio, because I heard they had a good PTSD group. So I got involved with the PTSD. I had a psychiatrist, psychologist, and I got involved pretty heavy because I wanted to change my life, being in Vietnam, trauma or whatever. And there again, the VA, they helped me so much. And then a few years later, after I was in the PTSD and everything, I called up and to talk to my daughter in Massillon when I lived down here in Dayton. And I talked to my ex-wife, and she says, well, she's not here right now. She went to the store to get something for me. And I said, okay. She said, I'll have her call you when she gets back. And I says, all right, thank you. And at that time, she says, I'd like to ask you a question. Now, this is my ex-wife. She says, I get my vacation for 2 weeks, and I like to spend it with you. And that's how we got back together. So we got remarried. Aww. And, yeah, it's a blessing. That's all I can tell you,
Absolutely.
And I love that lady to death, She's my apple of my eye.
That is wonderful. Let's talk about DAV, the Disabled American Veterans.
Sure.
And how you got involved with them and what you're doing with them now.
Okay, I was in the hospital, and I just got out of the hospital out of Great Lakes. Mm-hmm. So I went to Ohio, and me and my wife, I'm trying to think of the word where you call it, where you just take off and go get married.
Elope.
Elope. Okay, because I wanted to say that correctly. So we snuck off over to Chicago area where I'm from. So we wanted to really get married really bad. And you know how that is when you're young, you're in love and whatever. So we went to the downtown Chicago police station. It was 11 o'clock at night. So the judge called us in the chambers, and I had my Marine Corps uniform on and all that. And my best man was a guy named Paul Sigler, the guy that wanted me to go in the Army with him, buddy plan. And I said, only if we jump out of airplanes. He said, no way. So anyway, we got married about 11 o'clock at night. And the judge that married us ended up to be a full bird colonel in the Marine Corps. And he says, soldier, this one's on me. And I says, this one's on me. He says, yeah, this one's on me. And then he told me who he was and, his rank. And I saluted him and all that. That was pretty crazy. And then once we left Chicago going back home, we're going down to Dan Ryan. And this guy flew past us on this motorcycle and came down on his motorcycle and was going sideways down the highway. Oh my God. And we couldn't really stop to see what happened. He laid it down. It was laid down, sparks flying and everything. And we always wondered whatever happened on that deal. That was on August 11th, 1969. And then we were remarried in South Bend, Indiana by Notre Dame. So April of, oh boy, I should know this. '05, I think.
Okay. Oh, goodness.
So anyway,
That's great.
yeah,
Wow.
it's been an
So
exciting life.
that was your first involvement with DAV?
Oh, let's go back to that. I'm
Let's go
sorry.
back to that. That's okay.
Okay, so once we got married, we lived around Chicago, and one day some guy come walking up my driveway and didn't know who he was, and knocks on the door and says, "Your name Vincent Dec?" And I says, "Yeah." He says, "I heard you were in Great Lakes Naval Hospital." And I says, "Yes." He says, "You got a medical discharge?" And I says, "I believe." He says, "I'm with the DAV, and I'd like to sign you up." And I says, "What's a DAV?" I didn't know what a DAV was. He says, "Disabled American Veterans." And I says, "Well, I just got married. I don't have much money, and I'll have to pass and think about it, and I'll let you know." So before he left my house, he pulls out these tickets. And he says, "I got tickets here. They're $1 a piece, 6 for $5." And I says, "Yeah, I'll buy 5." So I bought 6 tickets for $5. And then about 2 weeks later, he comes walking up to my door again, and my wife says, that guy's back. And I says, "I wonder what he wants, So I open the door. He says, "Vincent?" And I says, "Yeah." He says, "I got a check here for you." And I says, "A check?" He says, "You won $500. You won the top prize."
Oh my gosh.
I says, "Sign me up." So that's when I signed up for the DAV in 1969.
Wow.
And since then, I got really active through a gentleman named, he kept saying that I looked like a commander, and I says, "Commander of what?" He says, "DAV." And he asked me if I was a member, and I said, "Yes, I was." I says, "I'm a member of Chapter 38 out of Massillon." He says, "Why don't you just transfer into our chapter?" So he talked me into it, and I became a chapter Vandalia, Ohio, Chapter 140. And then I gradually went into Chapter 9, which is kind of close to my home. I live in Xenia area, and I didn't know there was a DAV in Xenia, but I've been with DAV for 54 years, I guess.
Wow.
But since then, I got real active through Jake Daly, the one that told me I could be a commander, which I did become a commander of 140. And then another fellow was there, and he wanted me to become hospital representative for the hospital there at the Dayton VA Medical Center. And I said, "Man, I can't do this because I don't know what's going on. I don't really know that much about this." So as time went on, I learned a lot of things. I started in 2007 to the present day. I'm still DAV hospital representative, and I staff the ICU waiting room. I work with hospice. I'm on the National Cemetery Support Committee. Whatever needs to be done, I try to help the best I can, whatever needs to be done, and go out and do the things they need. And I've been National Deputy Chief of Staff, which is an honor, 3 times for the Disabled American Veterans National Commander, 3 commanders. I think I've been recognized by either 6 or 8 commanders of the DAV. I just became Junior Inspector General for the southern part of Ohio. I got many titles, and I'm very proud to be part of this elite organization. It's in my heart, just like if I was in the Marine Corps. It's such a wonderful organization, and the profits that they make, 97% of the money goes towards veterans, which a lot of organizations don't do that because they're paying their CEOs $1 million a year. Now, how can you help veterans by paying them $1 million a year? But anyway, the DAV is in my heart, and it's always going to be in my heart. And I'm, again, very proud to be part of this organization.
Oh, that's wonderful.
You're welcome.
Is there anything you've always wanted to share about your service or veteran experience that you haven't?
I think anybody who graduates from high school should look into a career, or not a career, but go in the military and experience it, because it will help them a lot in their lifetime. Then by, discipline and responsibility,
Mhm.
that's another big word. But I think anybody who lives in our country should, a couple years ain't going to hurt them, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Not everybody will accept the military, because when I went in, some of the guys went AWOL, and they asked me if I wanted to go, and I said, no, I joined the Marine Corps. I'm not AWOL in the Marine Corps. What's the matter with you,
Wow.
But, they got caught, and then when they came back, we were drilling out on the grinder, marching and doing our rifle thing and all that stuff, and the DI says, halt, and he says, right, face. And we were watching these guys that came in that went AWOL, and they were shackled, their hands and their feet, carrying pails, sledgehammers, picks.
Wow.
And they said, if you have any idea, you want to maybe leave the Marine Corps base here, this is what's going to happen to you when you get back. But yeah, they made little rocks into big rocks, and what they mean by that is they get a lot of little rocks and they pile them up into a big pile to make big rocks. And they would dig a hole in one place, put it in another place, and just continue all day long doing that.
Just busy work.
Yeah, busy work.
Hard
I don't
labor.
know if they were dishonorable discharge, or I don't know what happened to them after that. I just don't know. Don't
Yeah.
really care, because, like I said, I was there to be a Marine,
Sure.
not a deserter.
No,
I love my country.
of course.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your service,
sure.
and particularly what you mean to people when they see you and
Sure.
talk to you. You've done so much for so many people, and I just know this because I know you. And I appreciate all the committees you're on and all the
Yes.
work you do.
Thank you very much. Oh, one other thing. We have a poker run coming up October the 7th at the VA parking lot. It's on a Saturday. So if you want to participate in this event, there'll be signs up at both gates with arrows taking you right to the parking lot where they're going to line up for the poker run. And the first stop from the VA, well, starting at 9 o'clock is when they start coming into the VA. Kickstands go up at 12, so that's 3 hours where you can register and everything. But the first stop is going to be Brookville, VFW. And then from Brookville, they're going north to Piqua, VFW. And then they're going to come down to the VFW in Medway. And then from Medway, they're going to Sugar Melons. They'll have food and bands there for the riders if they want to stop there and check it out. Or, well, they probably will stop there because that's the last stop.
That's the last stop.
So if you want to stay, you can stay. If not, and you don't have to have a motorcycle, you can follow in a car.
Okay.
So I'm going to be in my car because I don't have a motorcycle like I used to. My last motorcycle was a 42 Harley, which I wish I would have kept, but I sold it before I opened up my record store, so I had a lot of money to start my store,
Sure.
which was really excellent.
And tell the audience what this ride benefits, who this ride benefits.
Okay, this ride's going to benefit volunteer services, so it's going to go towards like hospice and the Fisher House for needs at the Fisher House and also at hospice.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yep,
So it's for the patients
for the patients.
on campus.
And then also it's going to go, for the fund for the ICU waiting room as well. And then we're going to give some money to the volunteer services, and they can do whatever they want with it.
That's right.
Whatever they need, rather.
Yes.
Bird seed or whatever they need.
Well, go on.
And then also too, we're going to get a couple new park benches for the new hospice, which opens up November 1st at the Dayton VA Medical Center. And I'm going to get a couple swings, putting them out in the courtyard there. And then also we have this beautiful angel is going to be placed out there from the old hospice. And I got that all taken care of. So when you walk out the back door, you'll see the angel facing you. So it's going to be really a nice deal.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Vince.
Sure.
I really appreciate you coming in and talking to us.
Sure.
And telling us your story.
Yeah. Well, it's my pleasure. And if you invite me again, I'll be back.
Thank you.
All right.